So again, welcome folks to our first uplifting conversations. We're here with a couple of alumni to engage students in a bunch of conversations informally, and tonight's topic is navigating the world where queer, finding support and building community. And at this moment, I'm going to invite the panelists to introduce themselves, their name, pronouns, class year, major at Holy Cross, current location, and current job. I'll put that in the chat. All right, we can hit it off with Cece.
Hi, I'm Cece Garner. My pronouns are she, her, and I was class of 2019. I was a psych major, ed minor while at Holy Cross, and I'm currently in Charlottesville, Virginia at UVA getting a master's of education in school counseling. So hopefully I will graduate in May, and hopefully I'll have a job at a middle school soon.
Awesome, we'll kick it off to Melvin.
Okay, my name is Melvin Murray. I graduated from Holy Cross in 1986. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I teach middle school special ed English and math to 7th and 8th graders here in Springfield, Massachusetts. So I gave you everything, I think.
Sounds good, and then Dan.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Clavin, he, him. Let's see if I can do this. I graduated in 2012. I was a Spanish major. I'm currently in New Jersey, outside of New York City, where I'm based in non-COVID times. And I'm a psychotherapist at a gay affirming practice in New York.
Thank you all so much. For any students in the room, I have a bunch of questions here, but at any point in time, feel free to drop an X in the chat box if you would like to ask a question at that time. If you do not feel comfortable, feel free to direct message me and I can share your question to the panelists as well. So I'll ask the first one and I'll always paste the questions in the chat box for the panelists. So the first is, what are some words of advice for current students who are currently in their undergrad looking to build a supportive and affirming community?
So I graduated from Holy Cross a really long time ago. And Holy Cross is a very different place than it was sort of in the mid-'80s. The world is a very different place than it was in the mid-'80s. I didn't have the opportunity to build a community, and I think a lot of that was the fact that I wasn't sure who I was. And I work with kids all the time, and I think that what I see now are kids who feel more self-possessed. They have more sense of power, and they're navigating a world that is not only different, but they're navigating a world in a very different way with a sense of sort of not privilege, but self-assuredness. I don't know what the gay community is like at Holy Cross anymore, but I do feel like Holy Cross is a place that is accepting of the LGBTQIA community. I do know that in my dealings with people who are younger, and specifically sort of middle school kids, I had a very interesting conversation with a middle school boy today. I've long since become comfortable with who I am as a Black gay man navigating this world. I navigate these spaces. I navigate heterosexual spaces well. I navigate white spaces well. But what I find now is that when I have conversations with people, and make no mistake, you don't just get to come out once. You have to come out every single day, every single time you start a new job. And I just started at a new school recently. Every single year I have to come out to a room full of middle school boys and girls, which is kind of like tricky. And so I find clever ways to do that. But what I find now is it's like oh, okay. Like, it's not like, oh my God, I have to go tell someone. It's like, oh, okay. I was having a conversation with a middle school boy today and he's like, first of all, they're all fascinated with adults. And he's like, I want to know what your TikTok is. You're on TikTok? I'm like, yeah, I'm on TikTok. It's like, can I follow you on TikTok? I'm like, sure. It's like me and my boyfriend and like rants about politics. Like, sure, you can follow. And so he came into class today in the Zoom thing and he was like, I was on your TikTok. I saw you and your husband, boyfriend. I'm like, did you like it? He's like, yeah. I'm like, this is my favorite TikTok. What I find is that the community is out there and the community is accepting. But first, what you have to do is accept yourself. You have to understand who you are. You have to understand your true value. And you have to be able to say at times, you know what? This isn't going to work between you and me. Like, this isn't that, and that's okay. Like you be you, and I'm going to find my community. The goal or the sort of the challenge is always to find your tribe. And everyone's tribe is different. In my case, it is a Black gay man tribe, like or it's an academic tribe, or it's an educator tribe. But once you find your tribe empowers you, and it gives you strength, and it gives you comfort. So that would be my advice. Don't expect to have it all figured out at 22. I'm still figuring it out at like 56. I'm still having these new experiences. But cut yourself some slack and know that eventually you will find your tribe. And your tribe may change over time, but you will eventually settle into your own sense of value and your own sense of purpose, and enjoy it. It's fun. It's a great adventure.
Melvin, I so appreciate that. You said the word comfort, which sticks out to me a lot because I think of community largely, right? It's a sense of comfort, hopefully safety, but I think safety can look different for different folks. But comfort and empowerment, right? I would think to the community, as much as, you know, a lot of folks benefit, I think, from it being like an in-person, you know, we have these ideas of what friend groups or community looks like. Realistically, right, at like a tiny school, you know, and I graduated not too long ago, and I say this as like a tall cis white guy, but you know, the population when I went, right, was like a lot of other tall white guys and tall white girls, right? Heteronormativity is rampant anywhere on the planet, even in accepting and welcome places, because it exists, right, in systems and attitudes. It's a small pool, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, and I have no idea what it looks like today. But I'm thinking about it's hard, right, to be online a lot and maybe not have the immediate human-to-human access that you may have even had a few months ago or last year. So like, what does community look like? You know, it can be virtual, right? You know, I don't know if other schools in Worcester and like the consortium have more robust kind of like queer communities or sexual and gender minority communities or programming. That's like a beautiful resource that I know I didn't take advantage enough of at school, aside from like queer stuff, right? Just even other college students at like the many schools in Worcester. And I wonder if that's easier now in some ways, if it's electronic and digital, right? I just, you know, Melvin mentioned too, like community can change over time, tribe can change over time. And I think that's important as well, that, you know, it's important to have that while at school and, you know, make the most of what I think resources there are. Boundaries are important, especially for marginalized communities. Melvin mentioned like being able to say like, I don't know if this is going to work right now for us or for me. I wish I knew those words at 18 or at 22 or at 25 or at, you know, I'm 30 now, right? I'm just getting used to words like that. And that's what sticks out to me too, is knowing, trusting that change, you know, is normal and healthy in many ways, right? And if your community doesn't feel super robust at a certain amount of time or at a certain place in time, trusting, you know, that it will be what you need it to be, and you can change that. And you're probably going to be moving around quite a bit, right? You're in college now, but it's the 20s, right? Or your late teens are such a time of transition. I just keep thinking of like the comfort of that change, you know, and finding kind of safety and support in changing community as well, if that makes any sense. But I think that's my answer for this question.
I think you both had some awesome advice, and as a very new grad, I enjoy listening to it as well, because I'm still learning some of these lessons. I think one thing about finding a good community at Holy Cross is Holy Cross has a lot of good pockets of affirming spaces and affirming people, and it's just finding what interests you, whether that's in theater, in sports, in the chaplain's office, res life, within any sort of area of Holy Cross. I think there are great accepting people. So it's just finding those people that share the common interest. And sometimes that might take till senior year to really click with some people, and that's not fun, but just don't give up and keep looking for your people at Holy Cross.
Awesome. Thank you, Cece. For those just joining, if you feel comfortable at any time to share a question, it is on speaker view. So if you do not feel comfortable being recorded, you can direct message me a question I'm happy to ask. My next question for the panelists, reflecting back to your time at Holy Cross, transitioning in, your time at here, do you mind sharing a bit about your journey with your gender and sexuality as well as what resources, either on campus, off campus, with the consortium, that you found helpful?
I have my quick initial best resource I had at Holy Cross was definitely Meg Fox Kelly in the chaplain's office. I remember going on the escape retreat for first years within the first week of college, and she was mentioning this, and I was like, no, I figured out my sexuality. I'm definitely straight. I don't need this. And we had a talk. One of the talks on my retreat was about this guy figuring out his sexuality. And I was like, oh. And I emailed Meg while I was sitting next to her. And I was like, hi, I think I need to join your group. And joining that during my second semester gave me the courage to come out to all of my friends at Holy Cross and my family and really accepting and celebrating my own identity. So I think that resource, and even if you're not ready to be in group, just talking with Meg one-on-one was a huge blessing of my time at Holy Cross. So I would definitely use the chaplain's office.
There were no resources when I was there. Everyone was in the closet. There were no resources. It was the mid-'80s. Sorry, I'm jealous.
I also didn't, so I didn't fully know I was gay when I was still in college. And social media, this is like maybe not school specific, right? But like the luxury of having so much access to queer content, positive queer content, right? Uplifting, informative, egalitarian queer content on social media, I think is like unparalleled. The access you have, you know, if it feels like a safe place and like a supportive people, and I guess there'll always be like trolls and folks, you know, that are hateful or bored. But the amount of content there feels very safe to me. Safe, and I'll just say unparalleled again, right? That to me, you probably all know this better than I do, but it's like, I would do that. I also, you know, I never used the counseling center at the school. And I wonder if anyone has like feedback, if they, you know, if it has a good reputation these days. I'm a psychotherapist, so like I have to push this, that like I wish I started going to therapy a very long time ago and not waiting. If the match feels good and if it feels queer affirming and all affirming to like the many identities you all hold, right? Cece, it looks like you have more information, because I know that can be really actually a bad experience for a lot of folks. I have a lot of clients who had terrible college counselors. Cece.
Yes, I went to the counseling center my 3 years on campus. I was abroad junior year, but I had a fantastic therapist. She's sadly no longer there, but I know Kelsey Moran is in the counseling office, and she is a fantastic human being. I loved getting to know her my senior year, even though she wasn't my direct therapist. I had a lot of friends that saw her and loved her. She's super queer affirming and is another fantastic resource.
That warms my heart to hear. I'm so happy that there's like affirming spaces and professionals that are, oh my God, to talk about yourself all the time. It's so, you know, it's so necessary, I think, always, if you have access to it. And while you have access to it, that sounds like a great resource. Thanks, Cece.
Awesome. And kind of go back to that. Thank you for bringing this up, Cece. So for alumni in the room and for any incoming students in the room, Kelsey Moran is one of the other folks on the college with LGBTQ actually in the job title. So staff psychologist and coordinator of LGBTQI+ counseling services and programs within the counseling center here at Holy Cross. So just wanted to plug that. Next question. Did folks during their time at Holy Cross, post Holy Cross, study abroad, navigate a New York or DC semester, internships in a new location, or again, after graduation, move to a new space? How did you, again, find a welcoming community or seek resources in a brand new space?
I can start this time. I was a Spanish major at Holy Cross, and I spent my junior year in León, and that was really life-changing. First of all, that was, Spanishness is like a big part of my identity still. And you know, like I want to recognize too, like choosing Spain, again, I'm like a 6'2" cis white guy, right? And I didn't know I was gay when I was 20 or 21, but I had an inkling. And Spain is like a country that is really pretty liberal and like very open, still issues obviously, but like a lot of very queer country in general. There's like a lot of queerness in Spain. And so that was like really life changing, because to step out of like my life growing up in like suburban New Jersey and like conservative Holy Cross was such a whirlwind to be able to see different culture that like treated queerness in a very different and much more normative way. That was really life changing. And I worked for the Auxiliaries program after graduating, which a lot of people that I went to college with also did, where I was teaching for the Spanish government. And just being back in that country, that's when I like fully embraced. I was like, oh, I'm gay. Like, this is what this is. And I'm really thankful for Spain, you know, and of just getting out of like, you know, Massachusetts and New Jersey and the Northeast and like a very heterosexist country and society. I was really lucky to have that experience and finding people that were different than me and didn't look like me, which is still, I operate in a world, right, with a lot of folks that look like me, a lot of spaces, you know, that are pretty homogeneous, right? So stepping out of that, study abroad was like a real treat, real luxury and a privilege, right, to leave very like white America and do something much more eye-opening was very powerful and important, I think.
Like Dan, actually didn't study study abroad when I was at Holy Cross. College was something new for my family, and so I didn't take advantage of all of the opportunities to the extent that I think that I could have. But I think one of the things that I always realized growing up was that I wanted to escape, right? And escape looks different for different people. And I was fascinated with the other, because I knew that I wasn't part of what was around me. I knew that there was something about it that made me other. And so I was fascinated with places and travel. And we talked about this before you guys got on. When I graduated from Holy Cross, I took 2 years off. I came back to Springfield. I worked for Aetna Life and Casualty as a financial analyst. I graduated, I was an art major at Holy Cross. I was like, what am I doing? This is awful. And I ended up applying to the Darden School at UVA and was accepted. And I went to the Darden School and I enjoyed it, but I realized that everything I was doing was a path to something else. And that something else was to travel overseas. That something else was to escape and look for and hopefully find that tribe. And when I graduated from Darden, I got a job working for Mobil Oil, and Mobil Oil sent me to Australia, and I was in Australia for 8 years. And very much like Dan, being away was incredibly liberating because you're not burdened with the history that surrounds you. And we talk about sort of our own selves, but our own selves are so influenced by the expectations of your parents and your friends and just the general history of who you are. And when you go to another place and you're dropped off in that place and you have the opportunity to sort of reinvent yourself, but reinvent yourself as your true self, to just go on that sort of path to discovery. I knew that I was gay before I left, but I didn't have the opportunity to live fully in my truth until I got to Australia, until my parents were 6,000 miles away, until I could have changed my name and no one would have known. Like, I could have gone by my middle name and people would have been like, yeah, sure, your name is Michael. And so it was that freedom. And so, and what I also realized in that experience was I could do it without these other people. You know, as a younger person, you're always like, well, I might need this person, or like I was paying my own rent, I was making my own money, I was, you know, doing all these things on my own. So I'm like, okay, well, now I have the power to come out because I'm literally not reliant on anyone else for my survival and, more importantly, my happiness. Because for the first time in my entire life, I was truly free and truly happy. So it gave me the courage. I was already out to everyone in Australia. They knew me as Melvin Murray, the gay Black American. But I still wasn't out to my family. And so I took that opportunity when my family came to visit to come out to them. It wasn't that much of a risk because my mom's white, my dad's Black, and they were married in a time when it was illegal in like 57 states. And I know that both of my parents had to make sacrifices in order to pursue the family that they wanted to create. And because of those experiences, I knew that I would not be othered by my family. But you still have to work up the courage to have those conversations and figure out what those conversations look like. And it was that freedom. It was that sort of opportunity to be away and sort of discover the power within myself and discover that I can say no to you. The choice is now yours, right? And you can have me in your life as the person that I am. And if you choose not to, it will be sad for both of us, but I'm going to be fine, right? I'm going to be fine. Thankfully for me, my parents, my family's great. But again, like Dan, and that opportunity to travel, I think, is wonderful. Now, having said that, I do have friends when I was Holy Cross who did like the London thing and like the Spain thing, and I was always interested in the experiences that they had, because it always sounded to me like Holy Cross went to London, Holy Cross went to Madrid, and I'm like, you could have stayed here and taken a Spanish class or studied British history. And so if you decide to do the overseas thing, or you decide to do a semester in DC or New York or whatever wonderful programs that you guys have that I didn't have, jealous, then make sure that you take the opportunity to step outside the comfort bubble that may or may not travel with you. Make sure that you explore. Make sure that you take time to sort of investigate the culture, and make sure you take the opportunity to discover who you are in an environment that is new and different, and sort of alien.
I will agree that there's definitely something liberating and educational about getting outside the bubble and being kind of on your own, thousands of miles away. I studied abroad in Brighton, England during my junior year. And while I definitely learned a lot and was able to really come into myself, I also struggled a lot being that far from home and that far from the Holy Cross community. I built some great supports at Holy Cross my first 2 years, and it can be very hard to leave that, especially when all we hear from seniors coming back from abroad is how great of experience was and how life-changing it is and how everyone needs to go for a year. If you don't feel like it's right for you, I would not. If I could go back and change one thing, I would have gone for a semester instead of a year and not have let the culture of Holy Cross pressure me into that year. So if you don't think that is fitting exactly what you want, I would recommend listening to yourself.
Cece, I appreciate kind of that opposite side of the coin, right? Because the traveling is amazing, and for everyone, I think it's good to see and to hear kind of the spectrum of those experiences going abroad and traveling. So thank you. We've touched upon this a little bit, but are there any platforms, resources, apps, organizations that you all find helpful during your coming out journey and as you are navigating your gender and your sexuality?
We didn't have them when I was coming out. They didn't exist. Like, I'm half joking, but we didn't have those things. We didn't have the ability to create a community in a virtual space, right? I remember searching for books in the sort of the bowels of the library at Holy Cross, like at weird hours, so no one would see me in the, like, amongst the stacks, like. So that was my research. And then when I became an adult, the apps are the things that have sort of come into my life in the last sort of 15 years. I actually met my boyfriend on Match.com. And I will say this, since being back in the US, I moved back in 1998. I've lived in San Francisco twice. I lived in Ohio. I lived in New York like 3 times. I lived in Philadelphia twice. And every single time I moved to another city, I used those apps to find my community. I used Match.com. It was really Match.com, because every single time I moved to a new city, I was looking for a boyfriend. So, and I always got lucky. I had a great boyfriend in San Francisco. And they've always been helpful from that perspective, because I've always said I can either stay in this city and be by myself and sort of find friends in the traditional way and hang out with people from work, or I can go out to dinner, I can, invite someone else to dinner or sort of meet someone for a drink and sort of build my community from that perspective. And so when I am in new situations, I will rely on apps, but my life is sort of really settled now, so I don't really use them that often. I have a wonderful boyfriend who also teaches. So yeah.
I remember during my first semester at Holy Cross, when I was really trying to figure out my sexuality, I would go on Tinder or Bumble, whatever I was using at that time, and just see who else was on there to like make me feel normal in that space. Just like, oh, look, there's other Holy Cross students on here. I'm not the only one. And then when I moved to Charlottesville, my program is very small. We have 21 people in my program, and I'm the only openly queer person in my year. So trying to navigate that and finding other people in the Charlottesville area, I tried again to use Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, and it was all just like 18, 19-year-olds. And I was like, I feel creepy. This is weird. So honestly, still trying to figure that out, how to find a queer community in a college town, but not at a college age, is an interesting space to navigate. So if any of you figure it out before I do, let me know.
I'm thinking about social media still. Instagram is like so many beautiful accounts I follow. I guess I want to say this. You spend so much time, like I think in our early years, unless you are like very aware of like a sexual or gender minority status super early on, we spend so much time being like, I gotta be this, I gotta do that. And I view like being queer is being outside of this like tunnel that everyone is stuck in, and it is such an opportunity to just radically do something different. And I think a lot of it takes like a very radical acceptance of like many of our different identities and going with it, even though, you know, if it's risky, or even if it's just not popular, or if we're the only ones doing it. So speaking as a, I can't stop saying it, as like a cis white gay guy, which I think folks like me give our community like a bad name very often because we've been the center of the attention. Even in a lot of the queer stuff I follow online, like look for like the queer and queer and queer accounts and individuals and communities, because there's so much more, right, than just like the main people who are always represented, even like, oh, this is really gay friendly, and then it's like the same identities we're always used to. So like the radical self-acceptance, especially, you know, if you are aromantic or asexual, or just like how many identities of yours like can you really truly honor, and there will be community there as well. And we need more people like that are not just like the same privileged like gay men like myself, right, who have always gotten the attention. So I follow like just such beautiful accounts online that are these people, or that like boost those voices, or boost that content, or boost that art, or boost those videos. And it makes me feel so much more connected to like my own humanity. So keep looking, I guess, too, right? It doesn't have to be like the same gay, queer, etc., right? It doesn't have to be like the same avenues that like we've heard about our whole lives. I guess that's what I would say in terms of like the online great stuff.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Melvin, something you said, going to Dine-In Library and finding resources. This year, actually, we partnered with Dine-In, and they put together a whole resource guide. And I gave them additional titles to try to diversify the authors, which was really exciting. And they're like, whatever books we don't have from this list, we're going to purchase too. So like I dropped the link in the chat for folks to check out that as well. Another shameless plug. So for folks who are navigating but aren't going online and aren't doing that, like I think a lot of us turn to books and magazines and Instagram accounts and those types of things just to kind of see it as we're navigating inside of ourselves as well. So a little reflective question here. So if you were to go back and think back to your Holy Cross time, what would you do differently, or what advice would you give your younger self?
I feel like I'm the person who's always going first. Come on, guys.
I was gonna joke. It's Cece. What would you tell your younger self? What would you?
Oh, myself a year and a half ago? Stop crying all of senior year and enjoy it. I was very sad to be graduating, so let me think on actual advice though.
Yeah, but you're UVA. UVA is great. If I were going back, I think the one piece of advice that I would give myself is to trust myself and trust those people around me. And I'll tell you why. I had great friends at Holy Cross, and most of those people, you know, thanks to Facebook and those sorts of things, we've been able to maintain contact with. Everything about me has changed, and I also think they've grown and matured as well. But the friendships that I have with them have never been negatively impacted by me being gay, right? The strength of our friendship is still the same as it was when I was in the closet, as it is now that I am an out proud gay Black man navigating the world. And it wasn't like I need to have a conversation about coming out. I just treated it with them like they would have treated it with me. Like they're bringing their boyfriends or girlfriends around me. I brought my boyfriend around them. And it was never sort of like, at least never with me, a conversation about how they're going to deal with Melvin's homosexuality or how, oh, Melvin's gay sort of thing. It was just accepted as something like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, that it is what it is. My best friend from Holy Cross, who's still, I have two best friends, Mark and Michael. Michael, I'm godfather to both of his girls. I'm godfather to all these girls. No one ever makes me the godfather to a son. I'm still workshopping that, but I'm godfather to both of his girls. And I asked him one time when he asked me in like 1998, he said, I want you to be godfather. And I was like, I'm honored, but why? And he said to me something I will never forget. He said to me, he said, I want you to be godfather so that you are always in my life. I want you to be godfather so you're always around for my daughter, right? And that meant the world to me because I don't fit his norm. My life is so very different from his. I am a gay Black man navigating a world. And he's like, no, you are going to be perfect for my daughter. And I want to make sure that our paths never diverge. And the way to do that is to make sure that you have the responsibility for helping me raise this girl on some level. And so I wish that I had trusted myself. I wish that I had known my own self-worth because my friends have never disappointed me, right? And so I think that that's what I trust myself and trust my friends.
Melvin, I'm really reacting to that. He sounds like a really special friend. It's really like a beautiful sentiment from him. What would I do differently? I wasn't sure that I was gay, and so like I don't mind that I didn't know then. I don't mind that it took me a while because I don't think there's a timeline. I don't think there should be. And as Melvin mentioned earlier, like you come out all the time in many ways the rest of your life. I wish I'd been more critical or more vocal of problematic people or systems or structures or traditions at Holy Cross. You know, it's just like it in my experience, right? It was like just a very white, privileged, upper class kind of space. And I just wish I'd been more critical of systems when I was younger that I now do and get to actively do and work with folks in my youngish adult life now. I just wish I'd been more vocal because you have nothing, that's a privileged statement too, right? With support and I guess back to community, just question things more. I think I would have questioned things a lot more vocally at Holy Cross, things that I didn't like, things that seemed kind of off or not 100% legit that could have been improved for the benefit of a lot of folks. And kind of counterintuitively, as long as like you have safety, right? There's no rush for whatever it might be, right? If you know there's safety, if you know if there's people you can depend on, if you have shelter. Aside from that, like there's no rush, there's no timeline. That is so heteronormative, right? All my straight friends from Holy Cross that have their like little finance jobs and are buying houses now and getting married, and I am just like, I don't have to worry about that because I don't need to play that game, you know, and that's also queerness to me is not having to play that game if you don't want to. And I wish I knew that when it seemed like there was such a timeline for everything in the world because it's an unhealthy system that we live in.
I think my advice would be to be confident in who I was and do what I truly wanted to do and not what I thought Holy Cross students were expected to do. I think that relates to my abroad decision, but also just who I hang out with, how I spent time on the weekends. I didn't have to be the stereotypical Holy Cross student. In many ways I was and still am, but to be confident in what makes me different than that and embrace that and find people that support that.
Thank you. So I have one more question before I open it up to folks in the audience. For any students who are struggling to navigate their identity right now, what advice would you give them?
Go talk to Meg Fox Kelly.
Just say talk to somebody. Talk to somebody that's safe, somebody that's knowledgeable, somebody that will not judge you, or if they're judging you, that they don't tell you about it, right? You deserve that. Isolation, loneliness, especially, right, as a lot of everyone's remote. There's more research is coming out of like the physical, emotional, mental, but also just like physical health tolls of loneliness. It's actually something we don't understand fully, and we should more because it's a health crisis. And that's been exacerbated over the past 7 months. talk to somebody who loves you and every piece of you, even if you don't know those pieces of yourself yet. Never do it alone.
I think also some people might find it difficult to talk to anyone who knows them in real life. So a lot of these resources I've been talking about on campus might still seem too scary. Online is great. There's so many websites and platforms to find community in, and they don't have to know identifying details about you, who you are, where you're from. Yeah, so really either in person or online, just find someone to speak with. You don't want to carry that burden alone.
Awesome. So for folks in the audience, again, I want to welcome anyone with a question. Feel free to drop it in the chat or direct message me, and I'm happy to share your question. Go ahead, Britt.
Hi, I'm Britt. I'm a senior right now at Holy Cross. And I was wondering I know, Melvin, you kind of talked about a little bit how you use apps to like connect with queer people out in the world. But one, obviously I'm graduating soon. And then someone close to me in my life is graduated 3 years ago now. Oh my God, I think 3 years ago now. And he just recently came out, and just kind of thinking about like how to start being like a gay adult, and like how do you find gays outside of pride meetings, like obviously there are like gay bars and stuff, and that's a very obvious and like I guess very visual option, but one that can be kind of scary if you're just coming out. And then also for me, I'm not against those spaces, but I also don't drink, so that's not like the only space that I want. So I don't know if you guys have any places that you found that the queers gather, or that you like yourself, or like things that you first did when you were just kind of starting out in adulthood.
Britt, I think that's a really great question. You have to find a place that you feel comfortable in. And where I would start, and the advice I would give to anyone, is to decide what you feel comfortable with. And find something that you love. Like if you love art, find a queer art space or organization. If you love running, find a gay running organization. If you love reading, find a gay book club. And now those things are so much easier to find because you just do a Google search. Google search, gay book clubs near me, it pops up. But you start with something that you love to do and find a community that is gay that loves the sorts of things that you love to do, and your community will grow from there. That's the advice that I would give to anyone. And if you can't find it, start it.
You stole my words. I was going to say, right? I love, Melvin, I so appreciate you being like your own interest oriented, because again, like there's homonormativity too, right? There's like, and so alcohol and like definitely the gay community, the lesbian community, that's so prevalent for historical reasons when queer folks had to go to bars clandestinely to hang out. There's real reasons and context there, both in Germany and the United States historically, of why bars and alcohol are so big in a lot of queer communities. And it's so risky and it's so dangerous, and not everybody wants that. There will always be other people that want similar things to what you want. Like we're unique, but we're not that unique, right? And you gotta trust that those people are there as well. So I want to really echo Melvin's comment with like, what are you interested in? Know you're comfortable with it. And if like everyone loves like the same bar and it's not what you're into, like we can be friends with those people in other contexts, right? Or like we can find stuff that is not being forced, because then it's going to feel to be a marginalized identity and feel like you also like don't even fit into that community. That's like doubly invalidating, and you don't need to put up with it.
Dan, I feel like that's an entire another session, like being a minority within a minority group. I myself do not drink, and I'm a member of the queer community too. So navigating that and finding community in that space, and when you are looking for queer and sober New York, it is all cis white men, right? So again, that's a whole nother topic. But thank you all for sharing. I had a question come in. One of my biggest concerns about coming out to friends and family is how that could change those relationships with them. How did you navigate this fear to allow yourself to be vulnerable with them and share your identity?
I just want to validate that fear, because that was a huge one for me in trying to discern when to come out and who to come out to and what order. With friends, I think it strengthened our friendship. Actually, really almost all of my friends from Holy Cross had great reactions, were fully supportive, even the ones I was terrified of them not being supportive. And just being able to be honest with them and show them the full me made our friendship stronger, because I no longer felt like I had to hide and watch what I was saying and kind of like tiptoe around things whenever we'd be talking. Yeah, I don't really have a good answer for family, since that is difficult.
I think that you have to approach coming out to family very carefully. It is so multi-layered with families that I think the first thing you need to do is to be in a place where you lack the independence to survive emotionally, financially, and physically without them. Because if you're in a situation where you're not sure of what their reaction is going to be, then you have to make sure that you can if they make the choice to not have you in their life, then you need to make sure that you can exist without their physical presence, right? And so that is both sad and scary. And so when people are like, oh, should I come out? I'm like, should I come out to my family? I'm like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you should, until you feel like if they choose not to have you, then you're going to be okay. But look, I came out at like 26 to my mom. My dad was like 27. And it's always a difficult conversation to have, because you are making yourself vulnerable. You're putting yourself at risk, because no matter how well you know your parents, or how much you've seen them in other sort of circumstances, parents come into this with an expectation of what your life is going to look like. And when you lay out a situation that doesn't fit in the narrative they've constructed for you, they're coming out as well. They're having to construct an entire narrative that no longer fits into the narrative they had for you. So I'm always like and I had a really good friend that I worked at Aetna, this is going back to like 87, and his son came out to him. And he's like, my son came out to him and like, how did that make you feel? He's like, it was hard. I'm like, I'm sure it was, because what you constructed for him was a narrative, and now you need to construct an entirely new narrative. So I think that you have to be in a position where you can, if they decide not to have you in your life or in their life, then you have to be able to survive. You have to be able to live both emotionally and physically. But you also have to cut them some slack, because they think they know you, and you may be coming to terms with who you are and developing, but they've constructed an entire narrative that started when you were conceived. And so you're giving them a different picture. So I'm always like, I want to make sure everyone is okay. Like, kid, are you okay? Parent, are you okay? What are you both dealing with at this particular point in time? So yeah, have the courage, but make sure you also have the independence.
I want to echo both of those things, right? I think safety is key. You should always make sure you can guarantee your safety. And if there's people that you think it's not going to happen, then, I don't think you have to tell everyone everything either. I think that's shunned upon a bit, definitely, by people like, come out to everyone, rip off the Band-Aid. I don't think, I don't believe in any rule, right? That's the whole point of being queer. It's like, we don't have to follow every rule. I'm so close with my grandma, is one of my closest people on my planet to me. And I'm not out to her. She's really, really Catholic. And I'm scared of changing the relationship. And it's something I talk a lot about with my therapist, right? But I'm okay with that decision as well. So that's the other part too. Talk with people about like, what might it be like? Like, what are the fears that might be real? Like, how might it bring you much closer? Because the closer you're moving towards vulnerability and authenticity in your relationship with yourself and in your relationship with other people, it's going to bring you closer. That humanity ultimately will be more rewarding than a loss or a risk if the safety is guaranteed. And that said, I know people who lost a lot of relationships, or they changed, and not in great ways. And that's just a reality too. So really what Melvin was saying, knowing that like that change or that loss is also something that you still have support systems to help guide you through that in case that is like the worst case scenario, right? Because that fear is really real. That fear is super real. It says more about them than it does about you. But both what Cece and Melvin said are really the points. Like, if there's safety and also like, no pressure, think about it, rehearse it, write a script if you want, set your boundaries when you do it. You will become an educator for these folks. You might get used for like unpaid labor to be like, tell me about what it means to be XYZ. And I think largely it's met with fear, maybe less so for younger folks today. But a lot of folks, when you reveal another minority status, they're going to be concerned for you because they're aware of like the, the not perfect world we live in. That's dangerous for folks with marginalized identities, right? So I also try and give people the benefit of the doubt that they're often scared for you when they learn about a new vulnerable part of yourself, because they're worried that bad things will happen or that it means the stereotypes they've heard about their whole lives. And you get to be like, well, actually, no, I'm the same person. That's just like a new part, that you didn't know about. But I think the fear is real. And as Melvin said, like, have safety and have support systems outside of those folks just to be there with you. Community is really always the answer, I think.
I want to piggyback on something that Dan said, and that was, you don't have to come out to everyone, right? And there might be people in your family that you're just like, I don't feel like coming. I don't want to have that conversation. Like, it's that having that conversation at this particular point in time is not necessary. I will say this, when something joyful happens in your life that is influenced or that is the result of you being gay, if you meet someone that you love or you have an experience and you want that person to be part of it, then you might want to include them. Like, if I never came out to my family and I can actually tell you the truth. One of the reasons I actually came out to my mother was because when I was living in Australia, I was always coming back at Christmas time, and I had met someone, an Australian guy, that I had fallen in love with. And I wanted to be able to bring that home to my mother and be able to have real conversations. And that felt important to me at that particular time. And so that was sort of the impetus for having that conversation. So you will find that thing that is important enough to come out to that particular family member or that particular friend. And if you don't find that thing that's important enough, that's okay. You're gonna have to, like we've all said, you're gonna spend every single day for the rest of your life coming out in some way. I wear a Champion Pride t-shirt now every single time I start a new job. And then people are like, oh, you're gay? I'm like, yeah. So I get to have that conversation without even having that conversation. You'll find those ways to have those conversations. And let me also say this, you will find over time having the conversation is easier.
And being cognizant of time, I want to truly thank the panelists tonight. Cece, Melvin, Dan, thank you so much for your time. We had one more question come in. It is around work, so I want to shamelessly plug our next Uplifting Conversations on October 29th is all about thriving in the workplace while queer, whether it's job search, interviews, advocating for yourself. So I'm going to put that one on hold. And again, just thank you all so much for coming in, sharing a piece of your story with our students, and to the students who are able to be here, thank you so much. And I'm grateful you felt comfortable and safe to be with us tonight. And we look forward to keeping it in touch. And happy LGBTQ plus History Month, y'all.